Okay, welcome everyone to the webinar about Go Farm Connect, which is a program put on by Renewing the Countryside, which is located in Minnesota and Wisconsin, to help farmers that have been historically underserved, people of color, immigrant farmers, English not as their first language, tribal folks who have really struggled to access USDA agency programs, mostly Farm Service Agency and NRCS. So first, I want to just talk about the Organic Farmers Association. That is OFA. We are a group of certified organic farmers that advocate for better government programs and marketplace for certified organic production. Basically, anything that is on the mind of organic farmers, we work on. And we are farmers. Our board of directors are farmers. We do policy work every year and come up with quite a long list of our proposed policies for both, it can be used in state or federal government, and only certified organic farmers can vote. We go to Washington, D.C. on a yearly basis and advocate for people. If you go to our website, I believe that's going to be up in the chat soon. We have a link there to all of our policies that we're asking for in the Farm Bill. And we have had quite a few wins because, of course, what we're asking for is just common sense. So if you are a certified organic farmer or not, we do have associate members. And you're interested, here's, you can join and have add to our strong voice. We also have these work groups. You can find them on our website right now about organic dairy, about the new NRCS program for transitioning to organic, specific standard 823. We've been really working on crop insurance and having that work better, not just for organic producers, but for specialty crop producers, and had some really good improvements there. And the National Organic Standards Board meeting, which is coming up in February, we're going over those issues too. So if you want to use the QR code and find us, or else you can just go to organicfarmersassociation.org. So I will turn this over now to Sarah George with Renewing the Countryside, and she can talk about this really wonderful program that I met some of the people that had been helped, and they were just glowing with praise for the help that they received through this program. And it really helped them kind of move ahead in their farm. And we have on the webinar today people who work within the program direct, and I think even a producer as well. So Sarah, it's all yours.
Gosh, thanks, Harriet. I really appreciate that kind introduction. It's exciting to be a part of this project. I'm Sarah George. I'm the farmer-focused program manager here at Renewing the Countryside. And today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about Go Farm Connect. Next slide. Oftentimes, I don't know about you, but anytime you're working with the federal government, there's a lot of acronyms, and we want to help untangle those acronyms and navigate what resources are available, not only for our historically underserved or socially disadvantaged farmers, but for our smaller farmers, our specialty crop producers, and our grazers. So next slide. One way that we do that is we have regional connectors throughout Minnesota and Wisconsin. We actually have 36 regional connectors. We'd like to kind of reach, you see, there's some bare areas, but we're trying to get an impact throughout the state. Next slide. Our connectors are able to do multiple things. We connect them. I'm jumping 2 slides in. We kind of combined a couple slides. So some of the things that they do field days and office visits, and they host do one-on-one work with our farmers, and we connect them to the farmers in their community, either by geography. Our connectors, our 36 connectors, we have 7 different languages. It might be actually more than that. We recently started polling 7 different languages that they speak. So maybe they're more comfortable working in their native language than they are in English as their second language, trying to understand those acronyms. But also by specialty. We have grazing specialists. We have specialists for high tunnels. We have specialists for all different sorts of things. So farmland, access, specialty crops, animals. And so anyhow, that's a little bit behind the scenes about our connectors. Next slide. Here's a photo of some of our connectors. So our connectors, most of them are farmers themselves, and farmers are more comfortable working with farmers. And so to have that opportunity to begin networking and engaging with a farmer is already building that trust. And to us, it's really important. We move at the speed of trust. And so that's something that we really put as the focal point for the group and the organization that we're working with, is how can we make people feel more confident and comfortable when working with the USDA programs. Next slide. One way that we found our connectors, I'll tell you up front, we originally had, this is a grant that we have through the 2501 through the USDA. And originally when we wrote this grant, we started with 14 connectors throughout Minnesota and Wisconsin. And we decided that we really wanted to value the time when we're working with farmers. They have so little time in the summer. They have more time available in the winter, and we're able to kind of work with them on that time frame. But we realized that it's really important. We met our connectors with the relationships that we had here at Renewing the Countryside with all of these different organizations. And so we have connectors from almost every one of these organizations that you see on the screen, because they have relationships embedded in their community. And to us, that mattered. We wanted to add the diversity and build up the leaders in our community by hiring connectors throughout these different orgs. And we do value that time. So we paid for their time to learn and grow with us and find out more about these USDA programs. Next slide. Here's a few of the different things our connectors can help with. So they provide that one-on-one support in their community, on-farm events and office visits, but also just so that you have a better understanding of ways that we embed this into it. When you're working with the NRCS, which is most of the time when you're working throughout with the USDA, you're going to go for some of those different NRCS programs. They have to have a farm ID number. So we do trainings on the FSA so that they can get that farm number, and we go with them to the office. We also host events at the office so they learn where to park and how to get into that office. Who is the faces that they're going to be interacting with, so that they're more confident and comfortable if they need to go back with additional paperwork. We want them to be understanding and thoroughly ready when they go in there. So having the process explained to them ahead of time and helping them fill out that paperwork is really important to us. And then we connect them with farmers in the area that are doing the same things that they're hoping to do. Providing that resource so that they see, okay, here's the impact it's going to have on my farm. And to us, that's really important. Next slide. Now I'm going to go through a series of photos just to kind of explain boots on the ground. I'm photo heavy because photos say 1,000 words, and these are going to be 5-second slides, so be aware. Here you see some farm service agency who don't often get out of the office at a community garden where there's over 200 different families sharing community plots in 15 different acres. 22 different countries are there. But you know what? In order to utilize USDA services, they are going to need to do a farm ID. So the FSA is like, they're at a community garden. What does that mean? Next slide. So we brought them out and we were like, hey, check this out. Here's some of the things they're doing. This sweetheart here grows corn, but in between her corn, she actually plants beans. She doesn't plant beans so she can harvest the beans. She's planting beans so she can saute the leaves, because that's what they do in her culture. How do you report on that? And so we want FSA to see that so they can help us navigate that. Next slide. Record keeping on the next slide is something that really matters, because it's something that we all kind of get stuck on. How often are we planting? We invite our children. Now you can go back to that one, Harriet. Next slide. We invite our children to the slide. Go back, go the other way. There you go. So we invite families. Oftentimes the farmers we're working with actually have full-time day jobs, because you know how hard it is to farm. Sorry, but my quote is, it takes a hell of a lot of radishes to make a house payment. And we're trying to get these farmers to make a house payment using those radishes. So they often have a full-time day job. So bring your kids and learn about the programs and services that are available. Next slide. This is where we had an event at an incubator farm. An incubator farm is where we want to go, where we have a lot of farmers joining us. And so at an incubator farm, they have a lot of farmers that utilize the same land. And we wanted to say, hey, come together, let's have a potluck, and let's talk about what we can do to help connect you to the USDA resources that are out there and available for all of us as farmers. Not only that, this event was presented in Swahili and translated live in Swahili, because that was the language that a big majority of the farmers that were in attendance utilized, and that made all the difference in the world. Next slide. This is Hua. Hua's at a farmer's market, and Hua actually came to me one day. We go to farmers markets so that we can meet the farmers, because that's where they go. But Hua shared with me when I was talking with him about how he lost his land. He had 30 days to get off the land. Not only had he invested in perennials like rhubarb and asparagus and berries, but he had also, it was just about time to harvest the tomatoes that he had planted out there. And he came to me just sick to his stomach because there was tomatoes that were just starting to turn, and he had 30 days and he lost his land. We want to hear those stories so that we find ways that we can make an impact with them. So visiting at farmers markets is a big deal. Next slide. Here's an image of an office visit. If you've ever visited a USDA office, you know they're pretty small, but we make use of those offices so that they become familiar, so that they become normal. If you look over this FSA officer's shoulder, however, you'll see that we made an impact by hosting this event after hours. Nobody had to take time off of work, and actually live right there, they were able to fill out their 80, 20, 47s and prove their verification forms and everything so that they could get a farm ID right there on the spot. That's critical. Next slide. Our farmers go to programs like this particular one is for food safety training that was taking place. In order to work with some food hubs here in Minnesota, they wanted them to participate in a food safety training. And we were like, hey, guess what? One of the pieces, if you're doing a food safety training and you're feeding these individuals, can we bring them in? Next slide. We had a ton of an audience, and they joined. And while you're feeding them, can we bring in the USDA? Next slide. And actually have them present about what resources are available using the USDA. So here, the FSA in Minnesota actually has Yi on staff, and Yi stopped after the presentation and said, now I understand, for those of you that are English speakers in the room, that this is going to be a little boring, but I'm going to translate everything that was just stated to you in Hmong, so that those individuals in our room that speak Hmong can understand what we're doing. I actually felt really bad for the NRCS staff who was presenting after him, because the room erupted with noise as they were filling out their forms and asking questions. And they were like, let's calm down a little bit, because the poor NRCS was trying to talk. But having that in the language that matters, that is more relevant to the individuals that are participating, was really an important and critical piece of this. Next slide. Here we are at a farm. Some of the different techniques that we're talking about, this actually Matt and Kifa are both on the call today, sharing their resources about how to do rotational grazing and just showing, hey, I'm just getting it set up. You see my tools and equipment here. Let's talk about how we can do this and include the NRCS. Actually, Soil and Water Conservation District attended this one as well. You'll see in the next slide, Matt was explaining. In this one, you see him, or you see it in both of them. He carries around his, I was going to say food safety plan, but he carries around his conservation plan. We never opened it, but we could all see how much Matt valued that conservation plan and what it meant to him and how used it was based on what that thing looked like. And he held it loud and proud and was very excited to share that with individuals that were learning how to use that plan. Next slide. We also attend events. So conferences. This particular conference is the Emerging Farmers Conference over in Minnesota, and we have our connectors present at these national conferences. So the next slide shows Kifa. As she's presenting at this national conference here, she understands the program. She understands how to connect with the USDA. You'll see I have circled in the background, Kifa had explained to others in the room so that they were aware that, quite frankly, when she ordered her high tunnel, she was expecting a building to be delivered. It's important that we navigate what this feels like, because when she got an IKEA bundle of Tinker toys that showed up at the farm, she wasn't aware that she had to do the build herself. And there was a communication barrier there. And so it's really important to share what we've learned as we've begun working with these USDA resources. So we're very grateful not only that our connectors have utilized these programs, but understand what's going to happen and can explain that process throughout. And the next slide. The Emerging Farmers Conference on the last slide, just so that you guys know, is presented in, I think, 11 different languages live and translated in 11 different languages live. And we also go to the Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference in La Crosse, where we bring a lot of our connectors. Chris Marion does our marketing, so you can see all the bright glowing yellow shirts that we have there, so they know where we can start connecting with them. Next slide. Just a little bit about how we work with connectors. So you heard that we went from the 14 that were written into the grant, we moved on to 36, but that also includes training these connectors. So we did the train the trainer approach so that they can begin working together. So you're going to see a little bit about the retreats we did in 2023. We did intro to USDA programs and shared. We invited the USDA to this event. However, one thing that I'm going to be darn proud of is that we asked them to sit in the back of the room and listen. We didn't want them to be the trainers. We wanted to train the connectors with relevant resources that we learned throughout working with USDA. Next slide. And so you'll see USDA in the background in the bottom middle there. They sat in the back. They loved hearing it. They couldn't believe some of the feedback that was stated. And we really began networking amongst each other so that it was really a great opportunity for our connectors to get to know each other, but also us to get to know the different programs and what some of the struggles are out there. Next slide. We did a retreat on record keeping. So who doesn't love playing Name That Expense? Everybody got sticky notes and we talked about some of the bigger expenses on the farm. One thing that stood out to me is that we had 28 farmers in the room identifying their top 3 expenses. So 28 times 3, I'm going to just do the behind the scenes math and say 75 different sticky notes. I know it's more than that, but we're sticking on the wall so that we could sit and think through where would this expense fall on a Schedule F, because Schedule Fs matter. And quite frankly, one person identified farm labor as an expense, even as an expense, not as a top expense, but as an expense. And to me, that was profound. We're the invisible tools on our land. And we need to remember the importance of identifying that labor does matter. What if somebody gets sick? And so anyhow, we had this conversation about the impact of this. And we really valued the time. Yes, working with 36 connectors is amazing, but you do need to really know that, be prepared. You're going to be managing a lot of people and working with them. And we started connecting one-on-one every month. We would have an hour-long meeting with each of our trainers. So next slide. This one just shows some of that sticky notes you'll see all over and the networking that took place as we began identifying, hey, let's start working together. What are your specialties and how can we work together? What tricks have you used? Is this more effective? So this is at that record keeping retreat. And the next slide shows our final retreat that we did. It was moving at the speed of trust. We really wanted to bring in some DEI work because the farmers we're working with, we have a lot of diversity and equity, and we want to be inclusive in all the work that we do. So we did a full retreat, a 2-day retreat at moving at the speed of trust and really getting to the meat and bones of feelings, because feelings matter, right or wrongs, feelings matter. And how to approach some of these complicated situations and embedding trust when working with the USDA. And it does overlap into how we can begin pushing this out. So the next slide shows some of our connectors at this retreat, making connections, asking questions, tears were shed. I'm going to the next slide. And really building that trust, not only amongst our connectors, but then eventually it has really gone into our community of farmers that we've really worked with. Okay, the next slide that I have is my final slide, where I just want to share some of the feedback that we've got from the individual farmers that we've worked with. When we build that trust, they go with us confidently into the USDA office and began using the resources. And some of the things that they point out, that the USDA staff has friendly body language, that they were eager, they were welcoming, they took notes. Not only are we developing relationships with our farmers, we're also developing relationships and training the USDA staff, just so that you know this is who's coming in, kind of laying that groundwork. letting them save the time and set that time aside so that it's going to take a little longer when you're working with a specialty crop producer or when you're working with a historically underserved farmer. And so answering questions, sharing deadlines, explaining things, these are all simple. And the USDA staff is so overworked and overwhelmed. And so just reminding them, developing that relationship and showing them the importance has really been beneficial to us. So from there, I'm going to hand it over to the infamous Chris Marion, who's outstanding and does our marketing and advertising for the Go Farm Connect project.
I just want to just stick in one thing, and that is with the consolidation of, our larger and larger forms of the traditional, our American farmers. This is where the growth is for the number of farmers. For the USDA, when they, if they have an office, they have to justify, having staff. And, if there's, I know in my county, we probably have half the amount of farmers that we had in the 1950s. And so this is where the growth is in the specialty crop farmers, the kind of new immigrant farmers, and they just have so much enthusiasm for working with the land. And so I think that the FSA and the US and the NRCS actually, I think, are somewhat eager to learn how to work with this new group of people. So this is a very good program both ways. On to Chris.
That's a great segue, Harriet. Thank you so much. So hi, I'm Chris Marion. I do communications. I'm 30% time for Go Farm Connect. And before we kind of run through what I do want to make a pitch, since we are talking to orgs, that if you're going to do some targeted marketing to particular groups, please consider investing in communications, a person who will run the communications for that. Because I think that is a missing piece quite often in our grants. Is we have beautiful plans and dreams for what we want to do on the ground, but if people don't find out about it, those plans are not going to work. So please consider investing in comms when you write your grants. Next slide.
You're so right, Chris. And I'm going to jump in on that and say I got a call from the USDA saying, hey, I met this big group of people at a conference that had yellow shirts on, and they were all vivacious and energetic. And I don't know whose organization they're working with, but we very proudly smiled and nodded our heads. And it's made a huge difference for this project.
Well, I think there's a few things that we forget when we're writing up grants. And I'm assuming I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. You've probably all encountered things that you forgot. Comms and spending some money on advertising, whatever that may be. We swag advertising. Facebook ads are cheap, but you probably want brochures. Those are things that you don't think through. And I think it's important to not forget that. The other thing that, Sarah, I can't believe we didn't mention this, even though it's in all of our pictures. We really believe that food is essential at our events. If you noticed, we're going into USDA offices. We're having office visit kind of party open houses, but we're serving food. And Keith is going to talk about that. I want to zip through my part so you can hear from our connectors. But food is another thing. If you can get that in a grant, even if you have to fight for it, I think that's important when you're working with particularly communities where food is very important. So that's a struggle that we kind of have. So my role in Go Farm Connect is not so much a front and center, but I'm in a supportive role. That my job is to support the connectors who are doing events and gathering office visits and basically doing community organizing one-on-one to make connections with farmers in their community to bring them in contact with the USDA. So that's our funnel, community down into making one-on-one connections with USDA professionals. So what I do to support folks is I developed the branding and the website. I do event registrations, so people are not having to keep track of their own registrations. I put that on the website. I do social media ads for the events, and I also take a lot of photos when we're at things so that people know where they can find us. I do graphic promotions for events. You can see there's a poster there. That was a giant partner event we put on last week. So as you know, probably at your orgs, it takes a lot of time to do the design. And we don't want our connectors to have to spend time on that. We want our connectors to be talking to people and leveraging their relationships and not spending time on the nuts and bolts of promotions. So I try and get them materials that will work for them. Some people want posters to hang up. Some people just are going to send messages on WhatsApp. So I'm creating shapes that will work for that. The other thing is media. So I try and get our events in the media. We've gotten on TV quite a bit in the Fargo Moorhead area. This is an example at the bottom of a press release. That's our letterhead. That's what I send out. I want people to know who we're outreaching to. And sometimes you can't be super explicit because there's a gajillion lawsuits having to do with the kind of thing we're doing right now. So we want to create a welcoming space. We want people to know that they are welcome in the spaces we're creating. So we're doing that through our marketing and also through food and through having friendly connectors walk them through the process. Next slide. Some other things I do for support are I try and get to as many events as possible to take photos, or I train people to try and get me photos that will work for the Instagram and Facebook and the website. I do the design. So we designed those side of the road type directional signs, and we paid for them and got them to connectors because we feel like there are certain barriers to putting on effective events that, for instance, people might not have a printer in their community. They might not know how to design a sign that will work for the printers. You know, I actually go into my printer and I talk to them about everything I make, and not everybody can do that. We think the t-shirts are very powerful, especially when we're at an event together, so that people can find us. We also have brochures, and we have kind of generic business cards that people can write their name on the back. I always want to buy more swag, but you know, I'm constrained by budgets. I think swag is important. The other thing I do is once a connector, there's a lot of work that Sarah and her team does, meeting one-on-one, I think monthly with the connectors to kind of find out how things are going with them. Once an event is planned, that's where I kick in, and I send a promotions plan out to the connector. And this is all the information I need to effectively put up a Facebook event, get the registration on our website, reach out to the press. And then I also lead them on this, basically a Google form, through a process of thinking through how will you promote this? So this gives us a chance to talk about what cultural organizations are in the community that you can reach out to about this event. What newspapers are in the area? I mean, I live in Southwest Wisconsin. I don't know all of the counties and all of the newspapers and all the radio stations in the 2 states we work in. So I'm working with connectors and training them to think strategically about their partnerships and their media in the community, and then thinking through what materials would help them do their job. Next slide. Finally, if you do decide to invest in some comms for a targeted project, I think you will find that it makes your reporting a little bit easier on the back end. So if you need more convincing, we do a debrief after every event. Matt and I just had a great debrief with USDA folks yesterday for an event that we worked on, and hopefully he'll be able to talk about. But the debrief gives us a chance to talk about what worked well, what worked poorly, what were the struggles in working with USDA. We're actually trying to document struggles so that that's part of our mission, is to feed back to USDA where these programs are not working for new Americans, new farmers, specialty crop producers. And so that's a big part of the debrief process. And we try and capture that in Google Docs that live there. And then all of our connectors can look at each other's promotions plans, debriefs, and hopefully our events are getting better and better and better. And we we even write down what food did you have and how much did it cost, because we want to be able to talk to USDA about that too. Then you can see these are kind of Google folders I'm showing you. I throw all of we have a folder for each event. And in that folder are all of the promotional materials I created, pictures that the connectors sent me ahead of time of maybe their presenters or the farm where the event's going to be, USDA people. Then the promotions plan is in there, the press releases are in there, and then the final folder of pictures from the day is also in there. So if you think about how that might help your documentation, having these folders that have all of this stuff organized and ready to pick from, it can be very helpful when it comes time for reporting time. But I also use this debrief to sometimes write follow-up, depending on how fast we get this done, follow-up articles for the newspaper to show that there are new farmers and here's what they're doing and here's how they're getting trained. I also send packets to USDA with a narrative to show them who's participating with us, what the struggles have been, what the great victories are. And we love to capture quotes. So there's always a question about what quote do you have that you want people to hear about this event? And there's always the question, what happened at this event? Give me a quote about what was impactful. So we have a nice package for you to grab when it's time to do your reporting. Okay, next slide.
I just want to bring up something. There's been times too when you go to a FSA office and people register ahead of time, and then the FSA kind of has a whole packet about their land and kind of gives it to each person. Only don't they? Like they give them farm maps and things like that they maybe wouldn't have had before.
Yeah, Harriet, I think we're going to touch on that in this next section, because that is the magic that happens when our connectors go into an office and start planning an event. Interestingly, we started like so many of these kind of projects, and Sarah said it right. We are moving at the speed of trust, and that ain't fast. So the reality is we're in our second year, and we really just started doing events this year because it took us a while to kind of figure out how we were going to work with USDA. They needed to kind of learn to trust us. So while our connectors are building trust with their communities for USDA, they're also building trust with USDA to try and really get on board with the kind of events that we're doing. So this is a huge exercise in trust building, and it's the connectors that are doing that boots on the ground work. So Harriet, I'm going to make sure that we get that question answered, but that's really all about connectors. So it's my great joy to introduce you to just two of our connectors. These two are neighbors, and they have thrown field days together. They have organized some office visits together, and they've organized some events separately. So they've got a lot of experience that they can speak to. So you're going to hear from Kifa Abdi and Matt Hardy. They live kind of in the same neighborhood. It's Chisago. I don't know, Matt, if you're actually in Chisago County, but they're in Minnesota. And they're just fabulous. So if we would, this is one of the posters from one of the events they put on, and the picture at the top is actually from a mock field day. When we were figuring out how to do this project 2 years ago, we had a mock field day that went to both of their farms so that we could kind of run the plan of the show, what it was going to look like. And that has really informed everything that we've done since. So next slide. Oh, shoot. We did see those slides this morning, Harriet. I'm not sure what's happening.
Did we just lose Harriet?
Oh no, we lost Harriet.
It looks like we lost Harriet, but don't worry, because there's a couple other to have the slides ready to go. So Madison, do you happen to have them handy?
Yes, I do. One moment. I'm going to get to the end of that, and then I'll share the screen.
Hey, so while we're, I think this chat went in the chat. I put in a Facebook post. If you want to click on that while you're waiting. That's a post that was just written really recently about Kifa. This is from July. She's part of Minnesota Grown, and you can kind of see her family and her farm, and they are part. They're selling in Minnesota, and they're using those resources. Okay, so I think I was starting with Kifa. Did we miss? Let me see. Yeah, go. No, we're going forward now. Go back.
Yep.
There's Kifa. Okay, so is Kifa? Oh, there she is. Hey, girl.
Yeah, hi. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you. So Kifa is fantastic. I'm just going to kind of
Okay.
interview you, Kifa. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's great.
So we have some pictures here of Kifa's farm. You can see she's growing blueberries. They're fantastic. She's got some critters, and here she is teaching at one of our events. And what I love about Kifa is she is a powerful, I want to say that she is a powerful advocate for her community, and she will push and push to get the questions answered that they need from USDA, and she will tell them when things aren't working. And I love that about you, Kifa. So can you just tell us about your farm, what it's like, and how you got there?
It's very messy. Thank you so much. First of all, I'm very grateful for you guys to include me in this. My name is Kifa Abdi, and no matter what they told you, I don't know Matt Hardy. Right, Matt? He's quiet. I live in Chisago County. I have like little over 5.5 acres. I originally was born in Northeast Africa, North Africa, Somalia, and was raised in Europe. My family, my background, multi-generation, had farms, and I'm very, very passionate about being a steward of land. And I love having goats. It's since I was toddler, I had goats. I was just at Northfield talking to Growing Our Roots about group of Sudanese farmers about how it's part of our identity to have animals. You know, when you go third world or other countries, you will see people have like what now they call it urban farming here. It's something we had it growing up, a lot of us. I do what's called permaculture. I have sheep, some goats. I have a high tunnel. Sarah shared that I got a bundle, and I was like, what is that? I was very confused. A few trees of small orchard, but also I have blueberries and other bramble berries. I have 2 kids and my husband and myself, but don't be mistaken, my farm is run by community. Last year, my husband broke his leg multiple places. Matt Hardy was crucial for me to lean on to him and say, hey, friend, I need you. And a lot of the friends came through. Matt was there through and through. And that's what I love about farming. And I love about being a steward of land and connecting with other farmers. So did that answer your question before I run away? I have ADHD, so forgive me.
That's perfect. I just wanted to kind of set the scene. So
Okay.
Interestingly, Kifa was doing connector work before we signed her up. And she's
Yeah.
kind of a model connector. She connected Matt to USDA, as I understand it. And maybe Matt can speak to that. But what's interesting is she is always trying to get farmers through the door of USDA and always trying to get them appropriate help. And I think this is exactly what we were hoping for in our connectors, was that they had these relationships, that they were trusted, boots on the ground already doing the work, and people were seeing them. And so she's just such a great example. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, shoot. I thought I had
There goes the pigs.
So I meant there's a feel, actually go to one more slide and we'll kind of, so this is an office visit that Matt and Kifa organized. And Kifa, you were really out there. I would like you to tell us when you started working with the office and you know, from start to finish getting this event off the ground.
So in all honesty, I started last year. As soon as I knew we were gonna host, Matt and I talked. It was a teamwork, but I did give everybody's heads up. But also, you know, I want to say the USDA, the NRCA, the program, people who run the programs, they really want to help, but sometimes they don't know how to connect with people like us who are not corn, soy, cattle, swine, the traditional Western of last 70 years of farming, right? So one thing I didn't want it, and Matt and I talked about is two of us show up and say, hey, it's us again. And they will be like, where's all the people you were talking about need our services? So what I did is I wrote up in Somali and in Arabic and in French, and I took it to, there's a lot of Somali businesses and North Africans and Middle Eastern in Twin Cities. So I put in the community boards saying, we're gonna have this event. Is basically what they say in this culture, either get off the bat or use it. If you want to show up and hear those programs, please come. But also I reached out to my local white older farmers who maybe will consider transition into organic or are tired of paying for so much for fertilizer. And especially with the drought last 3 years, a lot of them told me they couldn't afford the fertilizer. So it's having a honest, heartfelt conversation with all the stakeholders. So that's how I started, and that's how Matt and I met multiple times and communicated about it. We didn't say just people of color. We didn't say just emergent farmer. We say everyone is welcome. All are welcome. And among Somali, Ethiopian, Eritrean, Lebanese. We counted, we had 6 Arab nations because Somalis are considered Arab, and 4 other African countries, regular people from, you know, European descent, Hmong. So and Matt can add to this, the room we were going to meet with them, we outgrew that they had to talk to the city of Princeton City Hall and say, please, can we use your conference or their meeting hall? And that was really good call. Good job on that, Matt. He was helpful with that.
So I'm going to stop you right here and just point out that I work with all the connectors to kind of come up with their themes. Who do they want to reach out to so I can pick appropriate pictures? Kifa was adamant. This is going to be a lunch and learn. Call it a lunch and learn because we want to give these farmers something. They're taking some time out of their day. It's hot. Let's give them lunch. Now we always have food. That's always something, but she wanted to really make that pop. And when I said, who do you think your target is for this? She said, this is USDA programs for farmers of all kinds. And I think you can see that was her intention, and that is who came. And what a fun crowd. I mean, I'm so sad I couldn't be there. This is so cool. So I think this was just so great. And can you talk for a minute just about the working with the USDA folks?
Right. So like I said, I reached out to multiple of them last year and then again early spring. And we have a new leader in our local FSA that's really, really I'm grateful for. She is younger and understanding, but all of them were like, just let us know, give us a few weeks ahead. I actually went and knocked the doors and sat down with them and say, okay, we will take care of translation, we will interpretation, we will take care of food. Who and how many can you bring and how many counties? Because I just didn't want it like one county, Chisago. We invited Washington, Isanti, Stern County. I actually went to all the way. Some people came from St. Cloud because I went to Stern County and talked to them. So that because there is a lot of large North African in St. Cloud area, but also there is a lot of emergent farmers who are young white people who their parents and grandparents lost the land in the 80s and 70s.
This is what we love about Kifa and what we hope for in our connectors is she knows the community. She has these over the fence conversations all the time. And now she's still having these conversations. She's doing the follow-up with these folks because she is friendly and curious. And so this is not a one and done, right? We're hoping that they will continue to talk with the USDA folks, but also Kifa is going to keep talking to them. So I think this is a great time to introduce Matt.
One last second I will add to is food. Food is universal, right? It's what brings us together. But particularly when it comes to the culture I come from, if somebody comes to your house, we have to feed them. We want to feed people. And people can always, they may not agree everything, but people will have good conversation over food. Nobody's going to go to war over food.
100%. That's so true. So take note of that when you're writing your grants. So I want to introduce you to Matt. I'm going to pop a podcast also in the, don't listen to it now, but I just want you to maybe grab it for later. This is a podcast about Matt. It's a hog podcast. So that gives you a little clue about what we're going to hear about. Matt is just a fantastic support. I love working with Matt on the paperwork and the debriefs. He asks hard questions, helps us design better ways of working with the connectors. And Matt, if you would, I would love for you to tell us about your farm and how you got there.
And how we met, Matt.
Well, we met shortly after we started our farming operation. My wife grew up on a farm. It's been in her family for over 100 years, but we started our own operation in spring of 21 and on raw land, leasing it from a friend actually. And one day I was out doing chores and this Toyota Prius comes tearing down the gravel road, kicking up dust, slams on the brakes, jumps out of the front seat and says, "What are you doing out here?" I said, "Oh no, I'm in trouble." And of course, that was just Kifa's way of saying, "Hi, I'm your neighbor. Nice to meet you. What are you working on?" So Kifa and I became fast friends after that. And it's been great to collaborate with her on this project. In fact, before I got formally invited as a connector for this project, I had sort of made a note to self based on some initial experiences I had with some very naive phone calls to the FSA about beginning farmer loans and purchasing a small farmstead to kind of get off the ground. And, you know, they did their best, but it was all very confusing and in some ways not even applicable to me. So I can go into some of the nuances there, but I sort of made a promise to myself that if I ever figured this stuff out, I would try not to forget what it felt like to be new and ignorant, basically, of how these programs work, and that I would try to help as many people as I could, and if the opportunity presented itself. And then, sure enough, a year later, Kifa said, "Hey, I'm part of this connector group that's getting off the ground. I think you should talk to Sarah George and see if she'll let you in, because I think you'd be a good fit." So it's been a really amazing experience working with the connectors as, you know, peers with that same kind of mission, working with really powerful leaders like Sarah and Chris to learn from them, and also to sort of have an excuse to be a little more evangelistic, so to speak, with encouraging people to leverage these USDA programs that may otherwise seem daunting or maybe even inconsistent with what they think their operation is, or what they want it to be, and realizing that, hey, these programs really are for everybody. And the pendulum seems to be swinging toward smaller, emerging farmers. That's sort of one of their mandates. And so to be able to just question as simple as, hey, have you ever heard of the EQIP program through NRCS at the USDA? And after we decode a few acronyms, they say, oh, that sounds great. Can I do that? And then the kind of ball starts rolling from there. But we have a small livestock operation. We raise chickens for meat on pasture, as well as some egg layers. We raise pigs in the woods, and then beef and lamb out on the grass as well. So that's a little bit of the background and how I met Kifa.
Yeah, doing a land walk with the two of them is really a hoot, because they have a lot of history and a lot of shared sort of understanding about the frustrations and the blessings. So there's Matt down in the lower right. He did crack open his conservation plan because I asked him to for a picture, but that's his soil and water conservationist from the county, who has worked on the conservation planning with him. And it is just so wonderful to see it all come to life on the landscape. So why don't we go to the next slide? And let's talk about, so we talked about the Chisago office visit. Let's go. So this is a field day. This is a real one, not a mock field day. We had this one last week. And so this is in Wisconsin. But Matt was well known to the Wisconsin USDA folks, which I am not sure how that happened. But Matt, why don't you talk us through? Matt couldn't be here. He actually had a family thing, but he was very involved in the planning process. And I would love for you all to hear how these connectors work to get good, effective events planned together with USDA.
So the key to this one was Bonnie Warndall, who's another connector and Renewing the Countryside staff. She was instrumental in connecting or contacting these county offices where she wanted to go next. And actually, I think in this case, it was she hosted an event in Menominee, Wisconsin, and some of the other offices kind of in the surrounding counties got word of it. And I get the sense that they were a little bit jealous of how well it went. And so they contacted her and said, hey, can we do something like that up by us? And we were on one of our weekly connector calls. And I think Sarah just put the word out, hey, does anyone want to help with this near Barron, Wisconsin, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere, depending on where your somewhere is. And I said, oh, it's pretty close to me. I'll help. And so I jumped in. Bonnie led the charge, but I had just I was kind of fresh off a visit to this farm, Whetstone Farm in Western Wisconsin. And as we started talking about potential sites to host, or whether it was going to be an office visit or a field day, we realized, hey, this will be, aside from the fact it'll be busy, there's no better time to do a farm visit than August, because everything is green and lush and animals are happy and munching on fresh pasture. And so let's save the office visit for the cooler months, and then let's take advantage of this. And so we were just looking back at some emails yesterday during that debrief and realized that Bonnie had started sending emails in March and April to set up a kind of an initial conversation at their office in May. And then we scheduled this actual event for August 14th. And so we had a pretty good lead time. That's another huge piece there. And I know Chris is very diplomatic, but when people send a note that says, hey, our event is in 5 days, could you drum up some Canva graphics and flyers real quick so we can get the word out? That's not fair. So the more lead time you can get, it also gives you less sense of kind of panic, or you can be very methodical and strategic and think about why you're doing things. Also get the other USDA and maybe other agency staff at the state or county level invited, because the farther out they are, they can block that off on their calendar. They won't have conflicts. So yeah, just getting a good head start. So that was kind of how that plan went. As Chris alluded to, I ended up having a double booking myself for a family trip that week. So I got to do all the planning and didn't get to enjoy the payoff of the event, but we had, that was another thing, other connectors kind of joined in the event to both help, make sure the event was well staffed, but also just to be there as supporters. And frankly, every time we attend one of these or see a presentation or hear questions and answers, we always learn something new too that benefits for farmers down the road.
That's perfect, Matt. Well, we want you all to be able to answer questions, but I wanted you to hear kind of the way we set up an office visit, which the office visits have been the topic of a lot of curiosity. Other groups are doing them now. We're getting a lot of calls. This might be why Harriet wanted to talk to us. And obviously field days, we've all been there, done that, but I think there's something about knowing that you're going to try and reach a different crowd than comes to all of the field days. That's special. The NRCS folks really appreciated, as Matt said, they reached out to us to do this event. Bonnie is in the purple there in the middle of the photo by the hoop house, and you can see all of the USDA staff down there in the barn on the bottom right. So that's it. We'd love if there's any questions to try and answer them.
Yeah, we can move on to the kind of towards the next. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, sorry, I don't know. My internet went out. I don't know what happened, but I came back.
It worked out fine.
So I'm not sure if anyone has any question. I didn't see much in the chat. I guess, we just were so excited at the Organic Farmers Association of how this is reaching out to community, but also building community between, various people, and the fact that sometimes you have to have more than one translator for the various languages that are going on. But like I said, I met some people at the Marble Seed Conference that were just like so excited that there was somebody who cared enough to help them, and that this is their country now, and that there are so many things really that the USDA can offer to help them with, and of course having viable regional local food grown for the local community, both for the actual ethnic communities that are looking for their food, as well as for the rest of the people who live in their community, that's invaluable.
I see that there's a question from Katie. Do people feel one-on-one support as important as these events? I think you can tell from Matt and Kifa's story that it's actually all about one-on-one support. That's why these folks are called connectors. So the events are really just a funnel to bring people in and build relationships. In many cases, you're just gathering the people that you're already talking to like go do a group office visit with you. But yeah, there's no substitute for one-on-one support. The events are just a way to, in a friendly way, get everybody in front of USDA and USDA in front of them, and have some fun and eat some food on a farm or in an office.
One thing I will add to that is, yes, one-on-one is important, but for example, when Matt and I had our event, and also when I was in Northfield yesterday, one of the key is I had 3 groups: Camerooni people who were speaking French, Sudanese speaking Arabic, and Somalis speaking Somali. So I will go from table to table, and I invited few people, and they invited their own community members. So there is a way to feel everybody welcome, especially when it's a group presentation. And then when they need one-on-one, like I just sent a gentleman to talk to Matt, because Matt, if you wanted somebody who's really good at talking about NRCS, with another gentleman who's not, I don't take offense if man says, I don't want to talk to you. I would say, oh yeah, good. I don't want to talk to you either, but I have a gentleman you should talk to if you need help. So I never take it personally. And for example, that gentleman, he's like, well, what about if he doesn't speak Arabic? I said, well, we will find you interpreter. So you see what I mean? It's like fairness and is like way of working both globally with the group and individually. Depends what the need is. If they will need one-on-one to talk about NRCS, yeah, Matt has to hold the hands for him and take him to the office, or I, if he was willing to work with a woman, and so on. But if it's a group, you can go around, and even though that person feels, here I am, Kifa or Matt invited me, and they feel special and make them welcome, then you can also at the same time help the group. Did that answer your question, whoever asked?
Oh, that was fantastic. Thanks so much for the whole webinar and for that answer.
You're most welcome.
So maybe we can go to the last slide. So this is how you can get a hold of Go Farm Connect or the Organic Farmers Association. And we're really happy that you joined us, and this will be recorded. It has been recorded, and there'll be a link up on the Organic Farmers Association under the Education Resources tab. So then you can turn it over to other people in your organizations or other people you know, and you know, as one way. I mean, there's many ways of doing outreach, but we just felt this was a really good success story. Anyone else have any comments?
Thank you so much for inviting us to share this incredible work that is happening, boots on the ground. We couldn't do it without our connectors, and we're just grateful for them.
I would say it's also really good to have a leadership that willing to support and go the length and say, okay, you're expert in your community, let's talk about it. So thank you.
Yes, this empowerment all the way around.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess with that, we will end the webinar, and everyone have a great day. I think, you know, it's probably already about 95 degrees here. I don't know why that would affect my internet, but maybe it did.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
Stay
right.
safe out there,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
keep up
Yeah.
the great work.